Hello and welcome everyone. A very good evening from Bangladesh and a very happy Teachers' Day to all my Indian friends. And hats off to you guys, all of you. We have been working in such challenging times, so a very, very happy Teachers' Day to all the Indian friends. Today we have with us Lu, and she is an amazing educator. To add on, she is an IB Educator Network member. She's a workshop leader, a podcaster, and whatnot. So, without further ado, I would request Lu to introduce herself and just get started because we can't wait to listen from her. And she is going to speak on one of the most prominent and important topic which is being heard everywhere, that is learner agency in action. So over to you, Lu.
Okay. Welcome, friends. I'm so happy to see you. Good morning to my friends on the North American side, and good evening to those on the other side of the world. Today, we're going to have some fun with Learner Agency. Hello, Sahana. Welcome. What we're going to be looking at is Learner Agency in Action. And when I heard that title, two things popped into my mind. What does learner agency mean, and what does it look like within the classroom? And then also, how do we take action based on agency? So that's going to be the focus here. And so just to give you a brief background of who I am am an educator just like yourself. I've taught in Dubai, I've taught in Germany, I've taught in international schools, and then also U.S. public or state schools for our British friends. So I've been a PYP coordinator, a teacher. This is my 13th year within the PYP. As Asnaha mentioned, I'm a podcaster. Confessions of a PYP Teacher is the name of my podcast. I love everything PYP, but I love everything which is good practice. So if we have people here who are not PYP educators, don't worry, because we're going to talk about something that's universal for all teachers, which is learner agency. So when I'm thinking about learner agency right now, my friends, I want you to pop into the chat. What do you think is learner agency? What does that mean to you? Do we have any ideas of learner agency?
I can't see them responding. Lou wants to know, what do you mean by learner agency? How does it sound like, look like, and feel like? Other than voice, choice, and ownership, just give us a very functional definition of how does it look like in your classroom? How do you define it when you are in a classroom? How do you feel it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Anisha wrote voice, choice, and ownership, the most expected answer. Yeah, good, Anisha. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. So what does that even mean? Because I think if we go into a lot of terms.
We have a student with us, and she wrote agency where you get knowledge of different topics. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome.
Integrated subject. Okay.
Hello.
Okay. Hello.
It's wonderful. I can see the actual comments up here, which is awesome. All right, friends. So as we're thinking about voice, choice, and ownership of the learning, I'm going to give you that flexibility as well. But the one thing that I want you to do during this workshop experience is put on your thinking hats. We're going to be doing
more from Kinda. She wrote that students take control of their own learning through voice, choice, and ownership. Well said.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so to take agency over your own learning, what I'd love for you to do is get something you're going to write with, whether it be a notepad, if that's how you like to capture your ideas, whether it be in Word or Google Docs. We're going to do a lot of reflective practice so we can build up. We're at a very unique spot right now within the school year. Some of us are launching in the Northern Hemisphere our new school year, and in the Southern, we're reassessing at the half year mark. So how can we then apply some learner agency to spark and kickstart student learning? So thank you so much for all the answers that are still coming in, my friends. So when we go into this workshop, if any of you have ever participated in my webinars before, I like to have some sort of theme that goes throughout. And I want you in this workshop to think like a foreman. And if you think of a foreman, I want you to think of, obviously it's related to construction, right? So who is the foreman? So what I want you to do right now, my friends, is utilize what you know about general construction and what is the job of the foreman, who's the boss. So what is their role in keeping the construction going within any type of job that they take on? What do you think? Post in the chat, please, just quickly.
Yeah, I can't see anything coming up. So it's a wonderful question to start with. Liu is asking, what is the role of a foreman? So if you can share your ideas, whatever, there is nothing right or wrong. Please feel free to just pour out your ideas. More than welcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't see anything coming up.
It's okay, because that's a unique question that you might not know, right?
Yeah. Yes, we have an answer. We need to be a little more patient, working on a plan to get to their success. Okay. Satyajit Singh wrote Learner's Voice.
Satyajit, hello, my friend.
He is like a conductor. Okay.
Oh, I like that. Like a conductor. Can you?
Very different perspective.
Yes.
Make sure everything goes smoothly. Yes.
Absolutely.
Supervisor or administrator.
Okay.
Amazing. A good role model. Yes.
Absolutely.
To ensure everything goes smoothly at construction site. Well said, Tuba. Tuba
Yes.
is the IB student. Well said, Tuba.
Facilitator. Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful audience.
Wonderful. So I'm going to share with you some of my ideas of what's the role of the foreman. And when I think of a foreman, I'm thinking of, and this is where I want you to think about yourself. I want you to think about how can you take yourself, if you're a teacher or if you support within the classroom teaching, how can you take yourself outside of your role? And that's tough, right? And look at it from an outside purveyor, a person, hey, how can you take a look outside of yourself? Because a foreman, a school administrator, someone who works in other parts of the school system, they're looking at how are you staying on track, right, with the learning, but also they're looking at how can they support us as teachers, as part of the team to get things done. And then they have to also report back. And sometimes as a teacher, when we're thinking about learner agency, we think about just our role or our students' role. But I want you to look at it from, if someone were to go, and I want you to think about this, and this is something to reflect upon within yourself and not post to the chat. Okay. This is a question I'm going to ask you to think about. Is agency evident in your classroom to an outside visitor? And what I mean is this. Do your walls, are they driven by learner questions? Are they driven by learner content of your unit? Because if not, if it's pre-packaged, if it's items that you have purchased or printed off teacher pay teachers or Pinterest, how is that reflecting the learner and their ideas and their questions and the way that they want their unit to go? And so thinking about that, how are we, because I think this is the ultimate question for you to judge, okay, is there learner voice? A lot of people have said voice, choice, and ownership. What does that even mean? Voice is that they have a voice in what's happening in the classroom. So that means instruction design, activities that are being created, and how is that being shown, right? How is that being shown to the community? Hey, this student initiated this engagement for this reason. Then choice. How are we showing with our work in our classrooms that choice is happening, right? And then also ownership. When you can see a classroom with ownership, you see a lot of students having roles within the classroom. They're not passively sitting there, they're actively engaging with every dynamic within the classroom. So that's what I mean. How is agency evident in your classroom? Okay. So with that said, we're going to take a look at some ways that agency can inspire action, because that's ultimately what we want. It's wonderful to have agency, but if it doesn't inspire student action, then what's the point, right? So I want you to think about that. How does the learning that's happening in your classrooms or the learning that's happening in staff meetings, right? When we're doing staff professional development from a leadership lens, how is it exciting action to happen, and breaking it down so it allows for learner agency even within adults within our school. So we're thinking about the whole learner community, not just within your classroom. All right, so thinking about this, my friends, I was really stretched, I'm going to be honest, of coming up with a new, fresh way of how do we look at learner agency that hasn't been done before. So when I took a step back, instead of talking about voice, choice, and ownership, I really wanted to say, well, what's the job of voice, choice, and ownership for me? So when you think about agency, the job, it's going to be about learner identity. If you think about it, at the heart of who we are as learners is our identity, how we think about ourselves and as a learner, and how we do things. And agency inspires and stretches that identity so that learners feel stronger and more like they can stand on their own. And that's what we want. We want these beautiful little independent thinkers who can think on their own. So with that said, then we got to scooch over to the right here to the process. What processes do we have in place so that learners can develop their identity? What do we have in place as part of our natural routine of our rooms or a natural routine of how we lead our school? Because then it will lead to the heart, which is in the middle, which is learner-driven action. Because without those components, it's not going to move forward. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit today of looking at that identity, how we can bring about identity, how we can bring about the process, and how we can bring about learner action. And then different ways that learners take action. Sounds good? I hope so. I love this. I'm having so much fun with this. Okay, so let's look at this so far. So thinking about this piece, my friends, identity, process, and action, what I want you to do is I want you to reflect. How are you already scaffolding this process for your learners, whether they be student or adult learners? Okay, so just take a second. How are you scaffolding this process already? Being that foreman. I'm just going to give you about 10 seconds more to help you with this. This is a quiet, reflective thing.
You have 10 seconds to answer this question, and this is quite an interesting question. This is going to be a very thought provoking one, and yeah, do share it with others.
Absolutely. And maybe right now you don't know. So maybe at the end you will know. So, and that's okay too. All right. So we're going to look at the first piece. What I want you to think about, my friends, is this. When we're thinking about identity, right? Who we are as learners, the learning spaces shape our identity. And so the question here is, look at this learning space. It shapes an identity of what's the role. The role of the teacher in this learning, it's beautiful, it's bright, it's colorful, it has all matchy furniture and walls. But what's really lacking here is student voice, student choice. It's all driven by the teacher. The teacher's at the helm, and the learners know there's one boss, and that's it. And that they're there to intake information and not be able to output any of their ideas. So, learning space really does impact our identity as learners. So, I'm thinking rhetorically, meaning inside of yourself. Um, do your learners have a say in how learning space is designed? This is huge in shaping identity because think about it. I have been in classrooms where teachers say, don't mess with my space, right? That sends a huge message. You left my classroom messy last night, right? And it should be, it's just that little vocabulary of no, it's our classroom messy last night. Because if we say my, and we design it, this is a very pretty classroom, right? With lots of color. What I love about it, there's lots of flexible seating, a lot of modular seating. For some of us, we don't have that space. We have desks that are pushed together in similar collaborative groups. But does the learner have a space in sharing how this is designed? Because that's going to reflect a lot of what the learning is going to look like. Because what you think they need is not what they know they need, right? So that's something to think about identity, right? How are you getting your learners involved in that process? And another thing to think about in regards to identity, how has the learning environment been designed to promote independent thinking? And what I mean by that is if you look at this classroom, every cubby, every shelf has a unique purpose. Children know where to go for writing materials, math materials, specific, right? Specific unit related materials so that they can self direct themselves. When we hide things in cupboards or don't label things or don't have a specific use for our space, once again, who's the classroom designed for? You or your learners? And that's really where we're thinking about, absolutely, in regards to our social emotional learning, this is all tied with learning space design. It's all about saying you matter, child, and your ideas of how the learning space is designed matter. So I want you to take a moment right now, and I want you to think, my friends, write this down somehow. How are you aiding agency in that learning space design and forming identity? Okay. So just take a moment to think about that. So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds. I know it's not a lot. But I want to give you a moment to pause. Okay, friends?
Are you taking time to reflect on? I would request Lu to give them a grace of 5 more seconds.
Okay. All right.
Teacher? Okay.
Yes.
Fine. So the question is, has the space been designed to promote independent thinking? So how do you promote independent thinking? How have you designed your learning space? Is it promoting independent thinking or it acts as a barrier? So think over your practices, and it is very important to think on that question, because what do we believe that the learning spaces are just place to sit? They need more scaffolding.
It's all right. No, I asked them to reflect on their own and not post in the chat because this is personal, right? This is very
All right.
personal. Okay, so now let's move to the next piece, which is about our process, right? So when you're thinking about process, I'm thinking about play, because when I'm thinking about a process of how you're getting the learners to engage with agency, play is a huge part of it, because the learner then is driving the connections they're making by playing with ideas and playing with materials. And I think there's not enough of this happening, especially in situations where it might be like a state school or a public school, where we feel driven by certain pressures outside of us, or even within an international school where there's certain objectives that need to be met within a certain pacing. So I really truly believe that play creates innovators of tomorrow. If you think about it, the people who tinkered with materials and ideas, they're the ones that created Amazon. They're the ones who created, right? They're the ones who created the internet and Google and Uber. They played around with something that had never been done before. And so, how do we give time for that so that learners can then make connections beyond what they ever thought imaginable? Right? And that's something that is a growing thing within the PYP. It's taken more prominence since the PYP enhancements. And a lot of people look at play as, oh, I'm just playing with some manipulatives. It's about like playing with big ideas and trying to put the pieces together. That's more meaningful. And so I'm going to give you some examples of what play might look like, okay, in your classrooms. And why is this a part of process? So when I'm thinking, once again, process, I'm thinking about the part of how am I helping learners to develop within themselves a way that they feel like they own the learning, right? And so play is all about that. It's the process in which we make learning come alive. So if you look here, a teacher easily could have done shapes, could have easily done pictures and had children color code the ones that were in similar shape and similar size. But instead, what this teacher did is that they challenged the students to look at an image of a flower. So clearly that's part of their unit of inquiries, needs, of living things. But then they're also having the students look at, well, how am I going to create this according, and leaving it open-ended? Are they looking at it from the lens of scale, that we're trying to make this similar in size, right? But color also comes into aspect here. Hello from Tunisia. And how are we, what we're leaving it open-ended so that the learners decide what are they focusing on. This helps to shape our understanding. What are the pieces that they understand already? And what are some of the misconceptions they have? But the learner is driving the thinking, okay? Not us. We might be crafting and guiding the process because the teacher specifically chose materials that are going to help the child to get to where they want them to go. Does that make sense? So this isn't just a free-for-all. Welcome from Lahore. Okay. And so, how do we do that, right? How are we going to help our learners to be able to challenge their thinking in a variety of ways? Another thing to consider within process and play is, are we utilizing open-ended materials and allowing learners to come up with this? So I'm going to give you a little background about this. The students were taught the concept of shape, so the shape of these objects, and space, right? And if you notice, they already understood the concept of number sets up to the numbers of 6. But they were told you need to be mindful of the space, right? That's it. They've unpacked the concept of space. And what's really amazing in this process, because the teacher let the child choose the materials, the child, the one that tells me this child understands this at a conceptual level is what? So, Asnaha, which part do you see where this child understands the number sense? Which one out of the 1 to 5, which one tells you most that they understand this?
I think number one.
And why? What makes you say that?
Yeah, because he could write the symbol, he could relate with the symbol. And I think he understood the other numbers as well. The only thing is he's trying to articulate his understanding in different ways. But the number 5 he is struggling with, that I could see, or it is an incomplete walk, whatever. But yes, the other, he could have all those things in place, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he used different materials.
Absolutely.
So it's not like same based on blocks where the teacher is dominating. So a lot of creativity, and yes, we could see the understanding also. Yes, there are misconceptions as well, which could be corrected.
Yes. But what's really amazing here, I think the concept that sticks out to me is that this child understands that one stick can only go onto this page because of space, right? If you put 2, he'd have to turn it this way. And he knows that that's not allowable. So that's why it had to go to number 1. That's a huge concept within number 6, right? And so we're seeing that the children are coming up with the patterns, not us. That is play, allowing students to tinker. So I want you to take a minute, my friends, to think, what are you already doing that's related to play in your practice? All right? And it doesn't matter what grade level you teach. Oftentimes people think that play is for kinder and pre-kindergarten. We should be doing this in grade 5, year 6. We should be getting students to play with materials and also ideas, different provocation on cards to get them talking and dialoguing and solving problems, because that's what we do in the real world. All right, I'm going to give you about 15 more seconds to write down. Is that all right? I get so excited that I just want to keep going. Yes, they can think and learn for sure. But the one thing I want to make clear, this isn't necessarily a game. These are open-ended materials where children are gathering and thinking and trying to process. Okay. And yeah, perfect. I'm so glad that you had a takeaway about play, because oftentimes people think, oh, they're just playing a game. It's not. It's more of, how can I play with these concepts, right? And so now that you've had a chance to think about that, Now I want to lead more towards action. Okay. And how does agency inspire this action piece? And what might that look like? And I think that when we're thinking about, and a lot of people don't think about this, yes, learning is by doing. I love, one of my favorite quotes is that the one who is doing the thinking is doing the learning. And so how are we getting the learners to do all the thinking rather than us, right? So when we're thinking about this next piece about learners taking action, and I love that, enhancing their creativity, we're looking at learning experiences that come to life through inquiry. We want our learners to inquire, and not just to inquire, not to question, not to research, but to question and research for a purpose, which means to take action of some sort. Because if not, then I'm sorry, it's a wasted experience. What's the point, right? What's the point if our learners do nothing about this? And so we have to give them the flexibility and the space to do it. And so when I'm thinking about this, I'm looking at this one here is how do learners make links between ideas and materials? So when you're giving those open-ended materials to students, what are connections that they're making between the materials? How are they then coming up with questions and wonderings about how do I use these materials, right? So here you have some dolls that this girl has and some blocks. We know the traditional idea of, using blocks is to build a structure of some sort, right? Well, this child has taken two different sets of materials and put them together. When I'm thinking about that, that to me is inquiry. How can I take something that's already existing and do something unique with it, right? And help myself to make some connections. So one possibility would be this. If you look here, I don't know about you, but I remember as a little girl, every little girl wants to build a little dollhouse, right? For her dollies. And so this child or two children decided, well, how can we do that? How can we take the materials we have within our classroom to make a house for our dolls? So they then questioned and they looked around the room and they knew that building blocks would create a structure. And they then took the building blocks to create a house for their dolls. That's inquiry. When play is when we take the materials and we play with them and try to figure out their usage. Inquiry is the next step. The inquiry is, how can I use these ideas and these materials in a new way to create new meaning? That's the difference. So you can see, you can't get to this part right here of inquiry if the children didn't have time to play before with the blocks. It wouldn't have been as effective. And so how can we provide these opportunities? So many ideas popping up. I'm so glad you guys are inspired. I love this. Providing recycled materials to create their own projects. Absolutely. All right. When we give students the confidence, I love this. Helping them to be confident in driving their own learning process. Absolutely. And this helps with that critical thinking piece of helping learners to be able to solve problems. Because we do this in the early years, then as they're getting into 5th grade, then you're giving them materials, sometimes metaphorical materials, right? And some situational prompts. And they've gone through so many times of playing and inquiring that it's easier for them to take on more complex problems, okay? So yes, and the one thing that I absolutely love is reusing materials over and over again. How can we do that, right? So I want you to now think of yourself as a practitioner and think, how are you providing opportunities for learners to inquire and make unique connections themselves, such as these girls did with these blocks? So take about 20 seconds to do that. All right, my friends. This is a lot, right? But these, I think, are simple things to think about. How are you shaping learner identity with how you design the classroom? How are you shaping the process by allowing for play? And how are you leading towards some sort of action? Oftentimes we think action is big. These girls took action. They wanted a different outcome, and so they made it happen. And oftentimes we think big, grandiose actions like saving the rainforest. No, and I'm here to say no. Taking action is how can we create something that's going to solve a problem for ourselves and within our community, right? And so when we're thinking about this, how are we then getting learners to take action? How are we doing it so that it's meaningful, right? Because that's the whole purpose of agency, is to scaffold the process towards action. So, I love peer observation. I love it. It's for sure. And this is going to also help with that critical thinking piece. So, thinking about taking action, right? What are some simple steps? Now, you're going to think the next part is not so simple, because with the PYP enhancements, it's up the game on what does action look like. So we might as well go where it hurts, right? We might as well go with what's the new expectation of action. So it used to be action could be anything, but now what is happening is that the IB says no, there's different kinds of action and they can be categorized. There's action that is participation, where we're participating possibly like in a discussion of a social issue that's happening and realizing a change needs to happen. We're participating in the process. There's also, though, maybe by participating in the process, then you want to make an advocacy. You want to advocate for those that are possibly voiceless in this world. So you share what you learned in participation with other members within the community. And that simply might be saying your feelings to others. It simply might be making a poster or doing a blog post, whatever it might be that speaks to your heart. Well, then some children feel like, well, advocating is not enough. So then they want to go for social justice. They want to be able to take the voices that they have and demonstrate them in a positive stance against injustice somehow. And oftentimes people do this through a peaceful protest or some sort of online campaign, through videos, through social media, whatever way it is that they feel that they need to make a stance on social justice. Other ways that you could do that. So if you're trying to advocate, and maybe you're not one to go and participate in a peaceful protest, but another way that you could advocate for change is by social entrepreneurship. So some people, they don't go out and voice their ideas to the world openly. What they do is they innovate and they come up with a way to solve their problem. So one thing that always comes to my mind is this, is we know that in many countries in this world, their access to clean water is not there. So there's an organization called Life Straw that created a straw that has a filter that you can drink from any water source, and it'll filter out the impurities so that you don't get sick, right? That is social entrepreneurship. Someone who saw an issue and created a product so that they could make some change. And then maybe you want to advocate simply by changing your behavior and your lifestyle choices. How are you going to do that, right? It might be just like this child in this picture, utilizing a refillable water bottle instead of single-use plastics. That could be a lifestyle choice. So when we're talking to children now about action, this is how we have to present it. What kind of action are you going to take? Are you simply going to stop at participation? You just want to talk about it. Are you then going to take it to the next level and advocate? Or are you going to take your advocacy and demonstrate it in the other three possible ways? What level of action are you going to take? And they're all important and all equally valuable. There's no weight on which one's more important. Okay. So that's something. And so this might be a scaffold for you, my friends, is this piece. Then, so let's say I want to advocate for somebody in my community by sharing my voice somehow. Well, am I going to advocate by doing something? I'm going to make the world a better place through some sort of action, right? Or am I going to change the way I think about this stuff? Am I going to permanently change the way I think about, for instance, recycling? I'm never going to use single-use products again because I know it's bad for our environment. Are you going to change something about how you feel, right? What do you feel about yourself and others who are harming the earth? It might also be knowing, well, you've just grown in your understanding of what you know about recycling and single-use plastics. Or are you going to say something? You're going to have the courage to speak your mind in some sort of platform, or just orally to your school community? Or is it going to ultimately change your being of a person in this world? And when I think about these types of action, my friends, hi, Vidya. When I think about these types of actions, I think the most compelling are not doing and saying. I think the most compelling are the ones we do within our hearts, the thinking, the feeling, the knowing, and the saying. And oftentimes when children take these types of actions, they're not honored the same way because it's not something physical, but it changes lives. It changes hearts. It changes minds, which is more important and the purpose of the PYP and good teaching. So I want you to think about that, my friends, as when you're shaping the action. So let's say I were looking at, the idea of recycling or reducing or consuming. Now I come down to the tangibles. This is what children know. So you're going to build up from what they know. They know that if we want to save the earth, some tangibles they could do is eating all their lunch so they don't waste food. A tangible thing is recycling, reusing water bottles, using less tissues, right? Or utilizing towels that have fiber, or, right? Using less paper. It might be turning off the lights when we go out of the classroom. All right. This is the ways we demonstrate how we're feeling or thinking, going towards advocacy or lifestyle choices, right? You see that link. So we need all three really to build up. So this used to be the type of action that I would take in my classroom, but it's so much more, as you can see. We're giving a purpose and a name for the types of action we're taking with our learners. So with that said, my friends, where are you in the types of action you're giving? And what is something new that you could do this school year or the rest of the school year to scaffold? And with that said, I want you to think about this whole process, right? I want you to think about this process of giving learners agency. The learning environment, play, right? Inquiry, and action. What are you going to begin today in your classrooms? Because it's wonderful to listen to us chat and share these ideas, but if nothing transfers back to the classroom, then you're not taking action on your learning. So I want you to pick one thing, one minute thing that you're going to do to take action today, well, not today, but tomorrow in your classrooms. Okay? One itty bitty little thing. So Asnaha, for you as a school leader, what's one little thing that resonated with you?
So what I can see, and I could understand from the overall action that agency is not just those three words, voice, choice, and ownership. Agency is like give life to the curriculum actually. And we
Mhm.
cannot just expect students to take action one fine day. It should be the culture of the school. The learning environment should speak about it. The entire learning community should be like that. The environment should be very conducive. I would like to relate it with someone whom I'm reading these days, like Albert Bandura. And if you could go back and see, the action component, it talks about a lot of, social things because of the social learning aspect. So I want everyone just to go back and read about it. It's beautiful and it will help you to make connection with what we are learning in enhanced PYP. So that is something, and giving them those opportunities where they can take ownership that we are the part of this community, and even we are taking the small tiny action that will impact us and that will impact the entire community. Giving them that courage that no action is small. And as you said, those small action, feeling, bringing a change in behavior. I would love to give you an example. I was back in 2016. We were doing exhibition and the topic was animal abuse. All the boys of that classroom took up that, and there were a few boys who came to me and they said that, ma'am, one of the boy is not an animal lover. So I just smiled. I said, fine, that's okay. So why do you want to do that? He said that because I want to bring a change. At times I feel it is not a good thing, but still I don't love animals, but yeah, I just want myself to bring that change. And I still reflect back on that, and he could bring a lot of change. One fine day, mother came to me and she told me that, what is he doing these days? He's feeding the cow with dry fruits. I said, oh my God. And we just all laughed. So, yeah, those were the little things. When learners themselves, they decide that, no, this is something wrong and that needs to be changed. We can relate well with that, Bobo doll experiment. I love reading about it. That what do? We expect them to do action, take action, initiate action. But are we really role modeling it? We can
Yes,
tell them, to use the reuse material or the recycled material, but the classroom environment is made up of all the fancy furniture and nothing is being reused. So, they learn by observing. So, if we really want our, learners or parts to become better learners, we need to role model it. So, it's all
absolutely.
about making a change in ourselves.
Absolutely. And I I'll be honest, I thought initially about talking about voice, choice, and ownership, but I think we need practical. And that's why I switched it to thinking about identity, process, and action. Because those are simple things we can do to make a huge change in learner agency, right? A huge difference in how our learners feel within our classrooms, especially since majority of us have been virtual for so long. And some of us are still virtual. Some of us are somewhat hybrid, and some of us are face to face. And so, even thinking about our virtual space, if we're still there, how are we getting our learners to engage with that process still, right? So the one thing that I want you to focus in on, my friends, is this. Ooh, so much action coming on. I love this. Is I want you to think about whether you are at midterm year or at the very start of the year. I want you to think like that foreman again. The foreman is, I want you to think outside of yourself as the teacher, but look at it from the lens of, I hate to say, an administrator. How does your classroom and the way it's operating, not just the physical space, but how learners are engaging with each other? How are you demonstrating agency that's leading towards action? It should be it's part of the disposition of the children, how they speak. If they're given independence for thinking, then naturally what's going to happen, you're going to see it in all areas. So I want you to think like a foreman. think of like, what would someone have to say as they walked in my room? What does my room say? What would my students, how my students interact? What does it say about me and also about how the classroom community works? So that's where I leave you, my friends. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to share these ideas with you. It's been a jumpstart to my school year as well. I love all of this stuff. I love that you guys are so passionate about what you do. And thank you, Asnaha, for inviting me. The pleasure.
Thank you so much to you, because I know in spite of being so busy, you could connect with all of us and you gave a plethora of knowledge to everyone, because I could see, the excitement and the engagement in the chat box. The best part is always I love your PPTs because it's more of thinking, thought-provoking, not of, delivering and spoon-feeding sort of. And when I was thinking about this particular topic, actually I'm very bored of these three words: voice, choice, and ownership. It seems like if you ask someone, A stands for what comes with A: apple, ball, cat. So it's like that. So I wanted to give people, a very good idea about what actually it is, so that they go back or go at a deeper level, from the surface level of it. So when I was thinking about this, there was no one who came to my mind except you. So that's your impact. So I thought that, okay, Lu is the best person to talk about these things. So it's amazing. You did a fabulous job, because now they are thinking, and that's what I wanted, that, people start thinking, because they are reading a lot. Because I myself had these words, labeled in my mind: voice, choice, ownership. When Monita conducted this survey, like big bold letters, voice, choice, ownership, so we got stuck over there, and I wanted to move up in the ladder, and
Yes.
it was fabulously done, and it's amazing. I have no words to say thank you, and I know how busy you are. Amazing, amazing. And there one more session of yours. I couldn't watch it live, but I was binge watching Ali's channel and I saw this pirate one. And Vidya is making connection with your pirate. You did one session with Ali.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
amazing, amazing, Liu. So I have a small token of love and appreciation for you. So I'll just show it to you, and I hope it will come up on screen. Okay. Yeah, I'll just go back. Share. So meanwhile, thank you so much, everyone. We learned a lot from the chats, and amazing, discussion was happening in the chat box, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being so spontaneous in answering the questions. Can you see some slides coming up, Lou? Because now it's blank for me. I
Yes.
don't see anything. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet.
This is what I can do for you. There are no words to express my gratitude, but yes, it was amazing, because I wanted to give something to think to the community, and you did it so fabulously. Thank you so much. This is for you, Lou. I will be mailing it to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
And for the participants, what we can do, I will be sending an exit ticket in the chat box. Please copy that link, and if you will fill that exit ticket, you will get the certificate, because I received a lot of requests from people that they want certificate, and it acts as a kind of takeaway. And yeah,
Brilliant.
so here's the certificate link. So fill that exit ticket form. It's very simple. 2 questions. One question only, that what you learned from this session. And that's all. So amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, you. And yeah, we may do some more sessions, because I am planning to do something related to planners. I've received lot many requests from people around the globe, those who are there in my contact, that do some session on planning, and we can plan along with some other wonderful educators. So thank you so much, everyone. And we are really thankful to you, my dear friend Lu, that you came over and discussed, in such a nice way. Thank you so much, everyone. That's all for today. We will meet you again in the upcoming session. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.